Do you feel that in a time when we are more connected than ever, we are drifting away from real human connection, especially to ourselves? I do. Hi, I'm Leticia Latino, and I want to invite you to join me and my very inspiring guests in exploring ways to reconnect to your essence, to your definite purpose, to what makes you tick. Are you ready? Hello, everybody, and welcome to a new episode of Back to Basics, Reconnecting to the Essence of You. I'm with Peter Mclaughlin. He's a certified hypnotherapist and life coach whose own healing journey began after a leukemia diagnosis in 2003, a turning point that led him to explore the deep connection between mind, body, and spirit. Today, he helps people uncover and heal root cause trauma through methods like happening, hypnosis, and present and past life regressions. He's also the creator of Blue Sky Hypnosis, a widely followed YouTube channel with more than 127,000 subscribers, and over 70 million views. And after years of service as a volunteer firefighter and EMT, he continues to bring compassion, courage, and purpose to everything he does. Hello, Peter, and welcome to Back to Basics.
Hello, Leticia, and thank you for inviting me.
Well, I'm like reading subscriber and million views counts. Well, I knew this was going to be a special interview, but when you make that kind of ripple effect, it's incredible. So I'm already inspired by you and your story. So always love to hear about the beginnings. Tell me about young Peter. Where were you born? What were you passionate about? Did you dream about becoming a firefighter?
I was born in Boston a long time ago when the world was much, much different. It's kind of shocking to remember back to when that was. And my grandfather was a big inspiration to me, and I loved the fact that he combined an open mind, intellectual curiosity with a lot of physical strength and athletic ability. And I think my inspiration for all of this work ultimately comes back to him and how he taught me, I think just through the way he was, to question things, to not just take things at face value. He had so many different opinions. And I remember when I was growing up being kind of horrified by them. I remember in the 70s, he said that he didn't use underarm deodorant. And I was like, what? That's disgusting. I can't, I'd been programmed by television. And he said, no, it causes Alzheimer's disease. He said that in the 70s. And now people are just starting to wake up to the fact that there's aluminum in the underarm deodorant. So he was a huge inspiration. And I think when my life hit a crisis place, I already kind of knew instinctively from what he taught me how to handle it.
That's it's always incredible to hear on so many interviews now I've done how that one person, one family member, one teacher, it just takes one person that is inspiring to us as a child and the incredible impact that may have. So
yes, so can I say too that I know from the work that I do and from the study that I've done that human beings, we are herd animals. I say that we're more like dogs than we're like cats. And it's really hard for us to stand out. I mean, we say that about really good athletes. We call them standouts. But it's dangerous in our hardwired part of our mind to stand out. It's like a zebra standing out. The lion's going to attack the one that stands out. It wants to be in the center of the herd. And so I feel like he taught me, in essence, how to go your own way, how to have your own opinion, even if the herd is going in a different direction. How to have people look at you like that's weird or that's strange or you're weird or strange. And when it comes to spirituality, for sure, having certain beliefs, having certain experiences, having certain opinions, I would say there's a fear there, because at least for me, because it sets you outside of the herd.
Mhm. Yes.
And it was his inspiration, I think, that helped me over time confront that and be able to talk about spiritual issues like meeting with your spirit guides, doing a past life regression, understanding your soul's purpose, even doing the research and understanding that our essence, the truest form of us, doesn't die when our physical body dies. And I really do believe, thanks, to this question you asked me, to him. Because most of the podcasts that I'm on, I start with, in 2003, I was diagnosed and blah, 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 blah. And that led one step to another, which is all true. But, your question really evokes in my mind, there was an earlier event or a person.
I love that. And that's legacy, also I'm a family person. So the idea that our family members planted something that it's living still in this world, even if they're not in presence, but in spirit. It's, I can feel that he's there with you in his teachings. Yeah. And part of you. So that I think it's beyond inspiring. And it's reflection point for us parents, grandparents, and we live such crazy lives. And we are losing sight of that impact that we have in younger generations that look at us and get inspired just by actions, by a way of being, and just by and I love the teaching. I mean, it's good. It's like, why? Question. Don't take it at face value. I think sometimes I tell my son, and I'm married at Dutch, that culture is I love that about them. They don't take it as face value. They like to question things. And so I tell my son, don't become a contrarian, because, that it's also difficult when you start questioning and then you question everything. But good things come from questioning, I think.
I do too.
And it has to be balanced, but yeah.
It makes the world way more exciting and magical and huge. Even when you find out things that may be horrifying, it also gives you a window. That show, the movie, The Truman Show with Jim Carrey?
Yes.
Which is really just an updated version of the allegory of Plato's cave. Mm-hmm. Yeah. The horrifying part is that this man's whole life has been a TV show, and that he's in essence been imprisoned in this made up world that was created by television producers. But the exciting part is there is something beyond the soundstage, that the universe is much larger than what he had been led to believe. So to me, it's like this double-edged sword. The horrifying part, maybe that we've been misled, and then the really exciting part that it's way bigger than we had previously imagined.
I love that. I absolutely love that. And sometimes, that's probably a 3-hour podcast on why maybe we have developed this thing where everybody follows. It's just easier to follow. Not everybody's on the same evolutionary path. So it will be very difficult to lead, for everybody. But we do need those that do exactly what you say, that are, just noticing the stage and planting the questions and leading us forward. And so I'm so happy that you are one of those, and that you use your story and your own difficulties, challenges in your life journey to inspire others. So, I guess in transitioning, before you get to the heart of what you do, because I'm very intrigued as well. I read you were a firefighter. This was something I always like to join, also for our younger audience, when they have to choose career paths and what they're gonna do. I emphasize, even if you choose this today, doesn't mean this is what you're gonna be tomorrow. So don't put so much pressure on getting it right. But talk a little bit about the career, like your transition into young adult, into a man, in terms of career path.
Yeah, I mean, the part of your question that I'm keying in on is that concept of transitioning from a child, in my case, into a man. And we don't really have any rituals in our culture that represents that. the way other cultures have had. And so my feeling about it is I don't think I fully transitioned into becoming a man until I had children, until my wife and I had children, until I was really compelled, forced to get up in the middle of the night and to change diapers. And, to deal with a child who's sick and clean up whatever happened, in the middle of the night in their bed, and then to do it again, and then to do it again, maybe, and to deal with a temper tantrum in a restaurant. And, all of the changes that they go through, where you really, I think, in order to be a good parent, you have to put them ahead of you to a degree. You have to put their needs and their interests ahead of your own. And I think that's really kind of, in my opinion, it's just my opinion, the essence of what it means to be an adult. Jordan Peterson talks about how it means that you put the tribe ahead of you. Mm-hmm. And I feel like in our culture, at least in my experience, it was becoming a parent that really brought that home. Previously, I think I was pretending to be an adult in a way. Mm-hmm. I lived on my own, and I had a girlfriend, and then I got married and did all the things that adults do. But I never really felt like one, honestly, until I had kids. I think that's really where it came home.
I love that reflection. And then, when to parenthood, it's probably one of those human experiences that calls us to really be selfless. I think that's the definition of selfless love, because parents, you love them, but you've always had them there. You really never sacrifice anything to have your parents. But the child is really life-changing for sure. For sure. Yeah. And the firefighting, I did that in 2 states over the course of 15 years. And it was a volunteer. I was a volunteer firefighter. So the 2 communities that I lived in, that was the fire protection. And in the US, about 3/4 of all firefighters are volunteers. Most people don't understand that. They don't realize it, because if you need them, if your house is on fire, or if you've been in a car wreck and they show up, there's you can't see or determine any distinction between the ones that are being paid and the ones that aren't being paid. Mm-hmm. They're just doing the job. And I was really, and still am, very moved by how many people in this country are willing, in the case of the fire service, to put their lives on the line and not get paid for it. I'm moved by the ones who do get paid for it, but it's really moving even more so that people are willing to put all that time, all that energy, and to risk their life and limb for their fellow citizens. Mm-hmm. That's a good awareness point. So I didn't know that that's a lot. So thanks for bringing that stats up in front. And so if you know anybody that's a volunteer firefighter, let's make sure to send them. I totally.
And the paid ones too. I don't want to take anything away from them, because they've made a career decision to risk their lives as well.
Absolutely.
They're doing really important work, and we're all kind of in it together. It was a great experience for me in that I didn't start until I was 41, and I already had other work that I was doing. So I was able to do this alongside, and I was fortunate to live in communities where that was when there was a problem, they called us. There wasn't anybody else. There was police, fire, and emergency medical services. And we provided probably 1/3 of the emergency medical and 100% of the fire. And we all worked together, all three branches, on all kinds of situations. And it was one of those experiences in life where, when I was growing up, I didn't dream of being a firefighter. It didn't come until later, until I had kids. Until really, it was inspired a lot by 9/11. I worked a block and a half away from the Trade Center, and any New Yorker would tell you that after 350 some odd firefighters were killed on one day, that the next day you still saw fire trucks and firemen going to calls. They didn't quit.
Yeah.
They didn't just walk away.
Yeah.
And that one of the other really moving things that I learned when I became a firefighter was that I think three guys from my department in Connecticut, they just talked to each other in the immediate aftermath of 9/11 and said, we're going. And they just grabbed their turnout gear and they got onto the train, it's called Metro North, to go south into the city. And they said when they got off the train, they looked to their left and their right, and there were hundreds of firefighters getting off the train with them, also paid, volunteer. No one had been called. No one had been asked. They just went.
Wow. Yeah.
And, to be a part of that brotherhood was a really moving experience for me. That when I was growing up, it wasn't in my mind. It wasn't in my consciousness. I didn't have anyone in my family that did it, and I still miss it, honestly. I mean, if I lived in a town, I live in Florida now. If I lived in a town that had volunteers, I'd probably do it because there's just something in the blood that gets in your blood that
I love to service. Yeah, I know it sounds fulfillment through service, which kind of comes repetitively on the interviews, and people that you cannot talk enough about it because it's such a great feeling to know you're helping others in need, and from a place where you're really nothing to gain and more to lose. You step above like probably what we do on a daily basis as human beings. So,
and there are metaphors in all of this too for the work that I do now, for what you do, which is in the fire service, you're never alone. Like even if you're doing a crap job, you always have help. You're never just sent off by yourself. That was my experience. You're never sent off by yourself to do it. Someone will always be there with you. When you go into a house that's on fire, you always have at least one other firefighter with you that you can touch, right? They're that close to you because it's so dark in a fire. You couldn't even see your watch. You can't see anything. You're feeling your way through. And I had this one experience in training where you go through a maze and they put a sleeve over your mask so you can't see anything, and it's already dark in the room and it's dark inside the maze. And you've never been in the maze before, you don't know how it works. And I was crawling around in this maze and I was banging my helmet into things because you can't see anything. And there's obstacles that you have to crawl over and everything. And I got to this one point and I couldn't figure out where to go next. There were walls everywhere except where I came from. And I knew there had to be an answer. And there was another firefighter in there. I'd never met him before because I was new to the department. But as soon as I heard his voice, this kind of sense of panic that I had, like, I'm not going to find my way out. As soon as I heard his voice, I totally calmed down. I'd never even met him before. It was like two spirits meeting in the afterlife or something. And we just talked it through together. And we discovered that the answer was above us. Like we had to go up and then pull ourselves up and crawl across. And I found that to be, as I say, almost like a spiritual experience, teaching me about how just one other person can make all the difference to the feeling of fear that we have, and that talking it through allowed us to accomplish something. So that sense of, as I said, that brotherhood where you're never alone no matter what you do is a huge part of that work, I think.
That's a powerful metaphor for sure. And so there's places where my mind could go in terms of because it's very spiritual, I think, what you just said. But I know, and it's an important part of the work you do today. So I just want to make sure that we tackle that you had a basically pivotal moment in your life where you had what nobody wants, a tough health diagnosis in 2003, as I read in your introduction. So tell us a little bit about that and how did it change? I mean, we are talking a lot of spiritual. I think this certainly probably injected a lot of spirituality and now helping others into their life's journey and the hypnotherapy work, hypnosis work you do now.
Yeah, I mean, it was actually volunteering for the fire department, and they made me take an extensive physical. And outwardly, I seemed very healthy. The doctor even said, for a 41-year-old, you're in really good shape, come back and give blood. And it was when I gave blood that the alarm bells went off. And they said, we think you have Lyme disease and a rare form of leukemia. And I was like, this is insane. It can't possibly be. I went right into denial. Made them do the test again. Test came back with the exact same results. And I went through all of those stages, like denial, bargaining, anger, grief, all of these things. And ultimately, it led me to, I'm going to have to do this. This is my grandfather. I'm going to have to do this in a different way because the hematologist oncologist said, we don't know what causes this kind of leukemia and we don't know how to cure it. And I'm like, well, doesn't make any more sense for me to come back to you. I've got to find something else.
Yeah.
And that other path involved naturopathy. And then as I did more research, I learned more about the power the mind has over the body. And I thought, all right, I've got to figure out how to control my mind so that I can extend my lifespan. Because when I asked how long I had, they said maybe 10 years.
Wow.
Maybe 10 years. And that was 23 years ago.
Amazing.
And a series of different events occurred. One of them was I owned this little shipping and packing store. And a person walked in to ship a box, and the box said on it, Hypnotherapy Academy of America, Santa Fe, New Mexico. And I was immediately drawn to it. I was like, wow, that's amazing. I've never thought about hypnotherapy or hypnosis. And I got into an hour-long conversation with her. And then I completely forgot about it. And then a couple other incidents occurred over the next, say, year and a half, 2 years, 3 years, that all at one point, in one moment in time, it all lined up. And it was like, I have to do this. Mm-hmm. And when I looked into that particular school, I discovered that the guy who started it was a former paramedic and that his focus was on the medical applications of hypnotherapy. And I was like, that's got to be the one. Yes. I called them and they said, we have one spot left. And this was like on a Thursday and we're starting on Monday. And I was like, I'll take the spot.
Wow.
And it just went. And I feel like my life was completely transformed by that experience. And so much of it was how I healed while I was there. Part of the school was you had to choose an instructor to be your hypnotherapist. But there was just, even in the classroom, going in and out of hypnotic trance, working with other students outside the classroom, having mystical experiences outside the school, like in the middle of the desert or something. It was really a remarkable transformation. I came back a different person.
Well, that's so amazing. So what would you say, because I love the fact that you share exactly how it happened, like a box and a title. And most of us would dismiss those signs, right? I call it like, this is where God is really like wake up, smell the coffee, or the universe is this. I mean, there's many ways it has been defined, but I do believe that we get those nudges and then it gets to a point where it's undeniable. Yep. And I'm personally passionate about helping others kind of take those nudges more seriously when they come. They call it intuition hits, they call it divine inspiration, the Holy Spirit, however we call it, but they are there for sure. Because it cannot be that every human is going to tell you a different version in a different moment or of something that happened that was that. Was there an inner knowing that after 3 years you just called, that's it? Or was also like a negotiation with yourself in terms of like trying to dismiss it? Or how could you help others identify when something like that happens? And maybe, do you think you acted because the time of God is perfect, as they say, or you could have acted earlier on it? I'm curious.
It's a fabulous question. And I would say that it's almost like I can't think of the perfect analogy, but it's like when something builds and it builds and it builds and it builds, maybe in the background, and then suddenly there's a tipping moment. Like the proverbial straw that breaks the camel's back, that weight's been added, weight's been added, weight's been added, weight's been added. And then finally this tiny little amount of weight is added and there goes the camel. That's what happened, but it was on the positive side. Mm-hmm. It started very negative, as I said, with denial, bargaining, and lots of anger. I remember a lot of anger and a lot of fear. And then it slowly started to shift. And being in the fire department really helped me because it was seeing and working with people who were in the worst crises of their lives, including fatalities of young people. And I'm thinking to myself, after this one call, I was the second guy on the scene, and an 18-year-old and a 22-year-old dead. Car accident, gone, both of them dead. And I remember reflecting on it afterwards, thinking, 5 minutes before they impacted that tree, I was obsessed with my own situation. And 5 minutes later, they were gone. Probably didn't have a health, diagnosis or care in the world, and they were both gone. Things like that. These were things that were building up over time, that I was diving into other modalities. Like I did a weekend panchakarma, which is Ayurvedic India healing. Mm-hmm. That was very spiritual, with meditation and yoga and a specific kind of diet that's set up for your dosha. And 2 people massaging me with an oil drip going on my forehead for like 2 hours, and I was having visions. Learning Tai Chi, and same thing, an intense weekend of Tai Chi and having visions with that. And I will also mention my grandmother on the other side of my family, who spent time with me when I was little, teaching me about Ireland and telling me stories of like the old country that were filled with magic. And I feel like I had an appreciation for that somewhere in the recesses of my mind. So yeah, there's definitely a part of me that still doubts things, questions things and everything else. But then there was this other magic part in there. So over time, that built up until there was this one crystalline moment between my wife and me where I looked at her and I said, I need to be trained as a hypnotist. And she looked at me and she said, yes, you do.
That's a definitely powerful story. And so you made this change, and you're healing yourself, and now committed to healing others through same technique, through same pathway. For those of us, I'm going to include myself on this one, that don't know a lot about, is it happening that you say, happening or havening?
Havening is how you pronounce it.
Evening. Okay. Hypnosis, regression work. What can you share in terms of, like basics that maybe misunderstandings, or who can benefit? I'm sure the answer is everybody, but who can benefit from that kind of work? What makes people turn into it, and what are the benefits of considering hypnosis?
Okay, that's a great question. The first thing that I'd like to say is ancient wisdom. There's part of this is in the Bible, and then the other part is in something called the Kabbalion. And it's a hermetic law or hermetic principle called the Law of Correspondence. And what it states is, as above, so below, as within, so without. And what this means is, this has a multiplicity of meanings, right? So as in the heavens, so on earth. That man was made in the image of God is what Christians believe. That our mind above controls our body below. That whatever is going on inside of you is being reflected outside of you. The good, the bad, and the ugly. And when I say what's going on inside of you, what I mean is that the subconscious is roughly 1 million times more powerful than the conscious mind. And the subconscious never goes to sleep. It's always aware of what's going on. It has no concept of time. Everything is now. And its job is to protect you. So something that may have happened to you 40 years ago, or it happened in another lifetime, if it hasn't been healed in your consciousness, then your subconscious treats it when you're triggered as a clear and present danger. So we all have these things. We have all been triggered by something. You know, for me, in this time of my life, when I get triggered, it's almost always like my wife and I will get into something. And what I know now is that the trigger, or what caused the trigger, is not the problem. The problem is the wound that got touched. You know, if somebody walks up to you and they just clasp you on the shoulder, they just kind of put their arm around you, or they touch you on the shoulder, it's sort of a loving gesture. It's a very common thing to do. Now, if you had a wound on that part of your shoulder, it would hurt like hell. But it's not the fact that somebody touched you there that's the problem. It's the wound. And that's a big piece of what I teach and how I work with my clients. Let's treat the incident where you got triggered as an invitation to trace that back through time and space to the wound that got activated, so that we can heal this part of you. So that when somebody metaphorically touches you on the shoulder, you don't go through the roof.
That's the wound that got touched. That definitely resonates. That's powerful. Yes, that's a book name. I always, with my guests, I'm like, that's a book name.
Okay, yeah. Yesterday, I was actually doing a podcast, and the host became extremely angry because there was lawn maintenance going on outside of where they were recording this. It was a remote podcast like this one. Like irate, very, very angry. And what I would say is that outsized anger refers back to a deeper wound inside of this person. So it's not so much what triggered it, which is, you know, people are doing lawn maintenance.
Yes.
But rather what that represented, or what that triggered, or what that touched deep inside of them. That's what's important. And if that person were my client, and they're not, and I didn't say anything, but if they were my client, I would be like, we got to figure out where this comes from. In the same way that a mechanic traces a symptom in your car, like it's making a strange noise, or there's smoke coming out of the engine, or it's pulling to the right, they trace that back to the part that has malfunctioned.
Yes.
And they fix that part, and then the symptom goes away. They don't fixate on the symptoms. The symptom is just alerting us that something needs to be dealt with. And I would say a person that gets super angry about something, if it's not a real, clear and present danger, like somebody's threatening your life or whatever, the life of somebody you love, it's an invitation, an indication to trace this back and heal it. And the question I love to ask myself when I have some experience that's unpleasant is, why am I having this pain right now? What is it trying to teach me? Because I know if I can answer that, I will learn something really important, and the pain will probably go away.
It's interesting. Yeah, interesting you mentioned that, because I remember me being very young and being very happy during the day, and then all of a sudden the happiness, like I felt heavy, and I couldn't understand why. And then I started like go through everything that happened today, and like I would go back through my day.
Yeah.
And it's incredible, like the stupidest thing, like this person said this thing at that moment, and that's what completely changed the way my day was going. But it took like a lot of intentional, like why, and you feel it like in your stomach when it's like, that's why I feel like that. And it's almost like you don't want to even think about, like, I think we're wired in a way where you want to keep going through your day, like pretending certain things didn't happen, and you let that heaviness settle. into you. And again, you are the expert here. This is my do-it-yourself kind of method to try to identify why I was happy this morning and now I feel all of a sudden like a little bit off.
Sure. And my view on that would be back to that concept of triggering. And that's kind of the perfect word because it refers back to firearms. And a trigger on a pistol, let's say, you only need, and they're different, but they're all within a certain tolerance or range. It might be, say, 4 pounds of pressure, 5 pounds of pressure. It's not very much. This one little finger can make this big explosion that can have enormous consequences. Well, you could hear a tone of voice. You could smell something that refers in your mind back to something that happened 30 years ago. And your conscious mind doesn't even have to be aware of exactly what's happening. You just get the feedback because your body is a feedback mechanism. You get the feedback through your body. Oh, I don't feel good. I have a heaviness or whatever it is. So I would say that something probably happened during the day that took your mind back to something unhappy, sad, frightening from the past, and it triggered or activated it. And as long as your conscious mind thinks, because it has no concept of time, that this thing is happening all over again, it's going to create the feelings inside of you as though it's happening all over again. This is clearly what was happening with that podcast host. Is that the anger, which is a defensive response, I would say, the purpose of anger is a defensive response against the perception that something of value will be or has been taken from you. And that thing of value could be your life, it could be your money, it could be somebody you love, it could be your property, it could be your time, it could be your self-respect, it could be all sorts of things that get triggered. So that's obviously what happened. So it might be, I'm not important, I'm being ignored. That's probably something like that was getting kicked off, but it's happening at the subconscious level. So we're not even aware of it because our body is being hijacked by a fight or flight response. And that hijacking, that mechanism is brilliant. It's what has kept us alive as a species. If we're walking through the savannah in Africa together and all of a sudden a lion comes up, you don't want to have to think, oh, what are my options right now? Is this dangerous? What should I do? You want it to be boom. All the thinking goes to your lizard brain, which is only concerned with survival. And you react or respond instantaneously. In fact, the training that first responders get is so that when that happens, when something really scary happens, you don't freeze. You know what to do because you've trained it so many times that your subconscious knows exactly how to do this. That's the whole purpose of training.
It's amazing. And it sounds like it's a lot of what you do, because if we say, well, Peter, how everything sounds interesting, but I go through my day, I don't have major thing, but based on what you just described, we all get triggered by something. So somehow I think that there are something out there if you go looking, right? Unfortunately, like a medical exam. That's why we fear medical, because they always, unfortunately, in your case, you were fine and they found something. I would say if you go looking, you probably are going to find something that is not ideal. That's what. So is this something that you would say anybody can benefit from, or there's particular circumstances where you say, well, hypnosis or any regression would be beneficial? Or this is something that you say, no, everybody could benefit from this?
Well, everyone can benefit by gaining self-mastery. When you're triggered by something that is not a clear and present danger to your survival, you are now the slave of that phenomenon. You're a slave of whatever happened to you in the past. You're basically a prisoner. And it can ruin aspects of your life, particularly relationships. If you go into a defensive response in a relationship, it's going to make things worse. Because the defensive response is either going to be anger, you're going to go toward the person, physically, hopefully not, or emotionally, or with yelling and shouting, or maybe saying nasty things, or you're going to retreat, fight or flight. Those are your only two options when your nervous system has been hijacked. And it works great if a lion is charging at you, but it does not work well in a relationship at all. It doesn't work well with a customer or with a prospect or with a boss or with an employee or with a child. No, doesn't work well. It doesn't work well on the road when you're driving and the person has road rage.
Yes.
Right? Does not work well. And there are certain things in other realms. So I say there's 3 realms to your life. One is your physical and mental health and well-being. Number 2 is your financial, your work, your purpose. And number 3 are your relationships. And you can have blocks to your financial well-being. What's a block? It's an idea, a belief. And a belief is an idea married to an emotion. They get married like this. The belief part of it doesn't, the idea part of it doesn't have to be true. But it could be money is scarce. It could be that money caused problems at some point in your experience, this life or a past lifetime. And so you may have taken on the belief that money is bad, or money causes division between people. And so you may be subconsciously pushing it away from you and then being upset that you don't have it. Right? Wherever you've got an issue, it could be in your, say, the mental part of your health. It could be that you're afraid to drive on the highway. You're afraid to drive over bridges. You're afraid to get on an airplane. You're afraid to speak in public. Where's that coming from? It's not coming from a clear and present danger. It's coming from the past. You know, if you've got even people with medical issues, and I'm never saying you shouldn't go check it out with your doctor. Obviously you should. But because the body and the mind are connected, I don't think people are well served to ignore the mental and emotional parts of what gets manifested in the body. You know, I've worked with people that would get a migraine headache once a week on Thursday, every Thursday. Like, definitely you want to go see your doctor. But usually they say, well, we don't know what causes it. We don't know how to cure it, just like what I heard. And for him, it was an inner conflict about his marriage. Like, he knew he loved his wife, but he didn't feel like she was a wife. Not because of anything she was doing or not doing. He just didn't have the feelings he thought he should have for her, but he knew he loved her. And the answer for him was in a past lifetime where that same person was his daughter. And his wife had died in that lifetime, and it was just the two of them. And they were very, very close. And then when she was 19, she got married and she moved away, and he died alone.
Okay.
So this explains why he was drawn to her and she to him, and why he knew he loved her, but it also explains why it just didn't feel right. And once he had that clarity, he knew what to do. Nobody had to tell him.
That is incredible. And obviously a lot of this resonates with people because you have a YouTube channel that has an incredible audience, Sky Hypnosis, right? Yep. And I personally going to check it out because I'm like, okay, 1 hour with Peter, it's not enough. I'm so curious with everything you're talking about. But what do you think is resonant? I mean, this at least it resonates with me, and we're all intrigued. And I think inherently we know somehow that our lives, even if we don't, like as a Catholic, don't believe in reincarnation, but I do believe in spirit, and I do believe the spirit. I mean, I just cannot think this is thought. I don't know. It's just I have mixed feelings about it. I get to be like you. I'm like, I have to ask questions about this one. But what do you think resonates the most with your audience? You have, 17 million views on some. It's huge. What do you think makes your content a success, and what are you sharing with people that that they find valuable.
Yeah, the part of the content, and I think that's one of the things about YouTube, is you never know when you put things out what's going to resonate with people. The things that you think are great, like, might just fall flat, and things that you put out there and they're like, it's okay, it just takes off.
Yeah.
There's so many different elements to it. The weight loss component is the one that far and away exceeded all the other ones. So I've got one weight loss video that has 3.5 million views just on the one video. And then the next category down from weight loss would be the spiritual, esoteric content. So I've got a past life regression video that has close to 1 million views. And then I have other videos, other past life regression videos, other videos, Meet Your Spirit Guide. And those have done very well. Not the same as the weight loss, but very well. And then everything else is just kind of a smattering. So there's videos for people that want to stop drinking alcohol that have done really well. It's surprising to me that more Christian videos that I put up didn't really go anywhere. So I have one on the Serenity Prayer. And then I've got the 23rd Psalm. And those are just sort of, just floating along like this. So it's just, it's sort of a mystery how that works, and you mentioned being a Catholic. I was baptized as a Catholic and I was raised as a Catholic until my parents got divorced. And then when I was with my father's side of the family, I would go to Catholic Mass. And when I was with my mother, I would go to a Methodist church. And I'm really, really interested in this whole piece because I consider myself a Christian. And I know that a lot of Christians, because of the work that I do, back to this being the tall poppy standing out, might not accept me because they're like, well, we don't believe in reincarnation. And I want to tell you about a couple of experiences that happened recently with clients to illustrate this. So last week on Friday and last week on Saturday, or maybe it was a week ago Saturday, on Friday, a man comes in who is a client of mine, and he's an MD, he's a physician. And he said, because of the work that you and I have done together, I have gone from just being a Christian almost in name. Like, I was baptized, I go to church, and it is what it is. I didn't really think much about it, to having this deep and powerful relationship with Jesus. Why? Because he met with Jesus in his consciousness. Hypnosis was the tool to get there, but he met with Jesus. And I don't know why this happened, but the very next day, another person comes in, doesn't know the first person, this female client, and she says the exact same thing. And so I think to myself,
I get chills.
How can something that helps people deepen their faith be something that people of faith would be against? And the mechanism, it's not even like, a psychedelic. Nobody's taking mushrooms. Nobody's dropping acid. Nobody's doing ketamine. And I'm not even criticizing those things. I'm not supporting them. I'm not degrading them. I'm just saying this is all within our own consciousness. And I view things like hypnosis and havening and EMDR and regression, I view these as tools, just like I would view a firearm. And I think firearms are neither good nor bad. I think it's how they're used. I think the same thing about knives. I think the same thing about fire. I have a lot of experience with fire. I don't think fire is good or bad. It depends on how it's used. I love to have fires in a fireplace. I love to have fires in a charcoal grill. I love to have fires in a fire pit. But I understand that fire can also burn down a house and kill people. But I don't think the tool itself is the issue, any more than I think a car can be used to rescue someone's life by getting to them to the hospital, or it can be rammed into a crowd of people. So I have my own wrestling with this, because I also know as a Christian that in 325, the Council of Nicaea, they changed a whole bunch of things.
Yeah, and it's great. I mean, this is a full podcast on this subject. But my take, and I'm a practicing Catholic, as practicing as it gets. But I'm also, I think, we got discernment, we got our brain, and we are called to also with our intelligence question. And that's why, for me, in particular, I go to Scripture, I go to the Bible, I read it on my own. I don't, when I have those conflicts about what they say, and I'm always cautious with people that are the enforcers, because
right. That's a good
Jesus
point.
did not call anybody to be the enforcer, and that's a fact. And so anybody has to deal with their own thing if you want to be enforcing others, but not enforcing yourself. But when we go back to Scripture, in reading it ourselves with the intelligence and brain that God gave us, then we can find the truth, I think, or whatever works for us. So that's why, while I'm very practicing, I also take it with a grain of salt, a lot of things, because, as you said, there's human touch, and human is imperfect in all the history. And so I always go to Jesus's words, and that helps me a lot in particular with that. But I do think that that you have a special work to do. And if that message came 2 days in a row, and the people, if anything, you're bringing people closer to what they believe in, whatever it is. It can be Jesus, it can be anybody from any other faith. And if that is the result, in my book, it's a big win for everybody. So yes, I think
there are even cases. I would agree with that man that is the doctor who came in that. And I'm sorry to make all these references to the fire department, but it is apropos here. The average person doesn't think much about the fire department until your house is on fire.
Yeah,
until you're trapped in your car, and you know you're injured and you're trapped in your car and you can't get out. And then they show up and it's like, wow. Mm-hmm, yes. And I feel like it's the same thing for most of us when it comes to to God and ascended masters and everything. When our lives are just going along and everything is sort of fine, it's like, they're like the fire department. They're out there somewhere. But then when you need them, you need them. And I have felt over the past 5 or 6 years, and because of this work, I have felt my own spirituality, my own relationship to in my case, Christianity, deepen because of these things, not in spite of them, because of them. And then the other examples, even recently in the last week or two, there are people, in this one case with a client, things happened in the church that pushed her away, like the scandals and so on. And this work has brought her back. Yeah. So it's hard for me to reconcile this, because I know in my own heart that this is the right path for me, but I do have that sensitivity of, will I be accepted, like that tall poppy concept, by people in certain churches or in certain faiths? Will they say, well, you're false, you're not real, you're doing the wrong thing, or whatever? It's a strange position to be in.
They did that to Jesus, so you wouldn't be in good company. I would say. I think I totally get it, and this is it's your integrity, your core. You want to be, I think, in alignment, but everything you have shared cannot come from anybody that it's not a higher purpose, higher God. I mean, if you have 3 people, for more people, even on this podcast, it's not viral, but when I get those texts, thank you for, that interview with Peter made my day. And I know I'm going to get this one because this conversation, I think it's very inspiring. That's it, and then what others think, so she's losing her time. What a waste of time. Is she making money from the podcast? No, I don't monetize my podcast. That's not the intention. Would I like to? Yeah, sure. Well, who doesn't like to do better? But, it's not what moves me. So I think that, I admire the work you're doing, and certainly you have an invitation. I could keep this interview going for 3 more hours for sure, because I'm getting a lot out of it. So But Peter, besides everything we talked, and I feel like we didn't even dig, like we were on the tip of the iceberg here. Anything that you want to share about your initiatives? I'm sure that there is anything exciting that you want to share the audience that we didn't get to talk to, but of course your YouTube channel will be on the show notes, and your contact and your social media. Anything else that you would like to share as we close the interview?
Two quick things that occur to me. One is just I'm just very interested in focusing at this time in my life more on the one-to-many. I've been doing the one-to-one for a long time, and the YouTube is a really great vehicle for one-to-many, but I'm really working behind the scenes on figuring out how to do the one-to-many more, including live, when people are together. So organizing retreats around a particular topic. So it could be relationships, like struggle with relationships, or it could be past life regression, or it could be spiritual regression, that kind of thing, where people come together physically and they're in the same place, or going and speaking to large groups. These are the things that I'm wanting to do more of. I find myself really drawn to that. And then the other one is just for anybody listening who feels broken. I feel compelled to say that you're not broken. You may be wounded, but you're not broken any more than your car. If, a part of your car has failed, it doesn't mean that the car is worthless. It just means that there's a part that needs to be healed, a part that needs to be replaced, perhaps. And that's really important to keep in mind, I think, is that as long as you have breath, as long as you're breathing, you are animated by the Spirit of God. You are a child of God, and that you can find through your own inner wisdom and intelligence. And I'm not saying you shouldn't do all the other things that are available to you medically, but you can find what's going on. You can find these things and you can heal them.
And coming from somebody that has had the challenges you share, and I hope your health is stable and it's good, and you certainly look as healthy as they come, and it's just inspiring, because this is not coming from somebody that's never been there. This comes from somebody that was handed a very difficult diagnosis, and you are inspiring others in your own journey. So that's incredibly powerful. So Peter, last question is, what makes you tick? I always say, if this was a good interview, I probably know a lot of the things that makes you tick. What other thing or a practice, or, when you get those dark days where you need to connect to your essence and to your soul, what do you do?
I meet with my guides every day. I meet with my spirit guide, and I meet with Jesus, and I meet with Mary, and I meet with the angel Michael. Sometimes I meet with some of these relatives that I've mentioned to you, and I meet with this dog. I don't know if you can see this dog right here.
Yes, I can. I
meet with him. Wow. And usually it's just this feeling of connectedness, this feeling of being loved. Often they'll even say that. They'll tell me that they love me. And sometimes it's very profound information that they give me. Sometimes they answer questions about difficulties that I'm going through. And then I have another way of tapping into what's going on in my subconscious mind. And I know we don't have a lot of time, but it's an ideomotor tool, basically. We talked about how your body's a feedback mechanism, and your body's telling you when it's happy, when it's not happy, when it's scared, when it feels safe. And there are tools that you can use to access that same wisdom that we might call your intuition or your inner knowing, or what your gut tells you or what your heart tells you. And these tools are just amplifiers. They're just amplifiers of what your body's already telling you. So I do that too.
Wow. Well, thank you for that. That sounds like you're in good company. And I thank you so much for your time, for sharing your wisdom, your journey with the Back to Basics audience. To all of you out there, I hope you enjoyed. If anything resonated, just please share the episode. Peter and I only want to inspire others, to help others. So you can do the same by just resharing this and and put it into the universe to help somebody in need. So thank you all for joining, and until a new episode of Back to Basics, take care.
You've been listening to Back to Basics. You can follow us on Instagram and Facebook. If you haven't yet, subscribe, rate, and review this podcast on Apple Podcast or any of your favorite streaming platforms. This is the best gift you can give us. Join me next week for another Back to Basics conversation. And if you want to find out about other exciting things I'm working on, visit leticialatino.com. Thank you, and until the next time.